My name's James, and this is the entire unpolished story of how I went from working as a registered nurse, working endless hours, helping others, to the point where after all of that, I didn't have any energy left for myself. I felt numb and stuck for weeks, months, and eventually years, honestly. But I was able to change all of this with just one decision, really. And that decision was to break free from the burnout that was plaguing me for so long, and ultimately to reconnect to who I really was and now embody more of than I ever have. So on that same note, I wake up feeling rested and peaceful with energy. I have intention and balance, and I've created a lifestyle with habits that support peace instead of pressure. And so, yeah, it's really a life that I never thought was possible back when I was having those long, draining days in the hospital with a fried nervous system, stuck in a broken system and just feeling absolutely lost. But this did not come easy. And sometimes it's not easy to maintain, to be fully transparent, but it is so worth it. So, it also didn't happen overnight. I didn't know anything about how to manage my emotions, how to create healthy habits. I didn't know the life-changing benefits of properly used tools and techniques like breath work, hydration, nutrition, meditation, and many more things that I practice today. But I just knew I had to figure it out, because the alternative was staying stuck in a life that truly didn't feel like mine. This is the full story on how I went from just existing to truly living for myself, not only for others. We can do both. And yeah, I'm gonna share all of it with you. So the wins, the mistakes, the lessons that cost me months, and most importantly, something that I've never shared before in my life, and that's the same exact four-step system that I use to turn everything around. So ultimately, my goal with this video is to serve as some inspiration for those of you who are in the same or similar situation as the one that I come from, because I know there's so many of you out there, and to give you the actual blueprint that I use to go from feeling like I was losing myself to creating a healthy structure and a lifestyle that makes me excited to wake up every single day, with gratitude and a sense of fulfillment with the work that I get to do. So it all started in a small town in Ohio called Minerva. I grew up in a place where people worked hard and cared deeply. It was a blue-collar kind of town. Not a lot of noise, not a lot of opportunities, but a whole lot of heart. And I also come from a family that believed in doing the right thing, in taking care of others before yourself. And I carried that belief into everything I did, to the best of my ability, of course, but especially into nursing. Becoming a registered nurse felt like a calling to me. There really was no other decision or choice to make at that time. And it wasn't just a career decision, it was who I was. I wanted to help people. Quite simply, I wanted to serve. I wanted to matter, to do work that was meaningful, and especially at a meaningful time in people's lives. And for a while, all of that did matter. I gave everything I had to that job, to the patients, most importantly, but also to the families and to that system. But to the identity of the nurse, is a deep part of this. I gave so much to that. And, 7 years I spent on that path, doing bedside nursing, many different flavors and varieties of it. But really, it was 7 years of missed holidays, sleepless nights, emotional roller coasters, as we all experience. 7 years of witnessing life begin and end in the span of a shift, which, not many other jobs you can say that. 7 years of comforting families, charting until 3, 4, 5 a.m., of running on caffeine, adrenaline, and the belief that this sacrifice meant something. And it did. But it also cost me more than I realized, because somewhere along the way I lost touch with myself. I ignored the signs for a long time. It's like an insidious slow creep. burnout. So, but for me, it showed up as things like constant fatigue, foggy mind, disconnection from my sense of joy and the things that gave me that outside of work. And also within it, there was this ache in my chest that said like, this is not sustainable. And it was something I suppressed for quite some time. But, we're really taught to push through, especially in nursing, to just be strong, to be the backbone, the strong hand somebody can hold, to just make it through the weekend, right? There's such a common phrase. But until one day, I really couldn't. I remember it pretty clearly. So I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot, scrubs on, badge clipped, but I just couldn't open the door. I stared out the windshield, numb, burnt out, and hollow. And that was one of the moments, perhaps the most clear to me, where everything just broke open. The one where I finally listened to the voice inside me that had been whispering for years, "You're not okay. You're running on empty, and this life, it isn't yours anymore." So that scared the hell out of me, because nursing wasn't just what I did, it was a big part of who I was. And if I let go of that, who would I be? But, I think the deeper fear there was waking up 10 years from now, even more exhausted, even more resentful, even more disconnected from myself. So yeah, I made a decision, not a dramatic one, not some cinematic quitting scene, but a quiet, soul-level decision to find another way for myself, to rebuild, to reconnect, and to ultimately remember who I was beneath the burnout. And so that decision really changed everything for me. It's a big reason of where I am right now. But it didn't happen overnight. There were no instant breakthroughs or massive revelations, not in the way that they're typically portrayed, at least. There definitely wasn't any magic fixes. It started with breath. It started with hydration. It started with silence and stillness. It started with relationships, with learning how to feel again. I began to regulate my nervous system. I started to understand the science of stress, the role of language, stories, and how my inner stories were impacting the way I treat myself and show up in the world. I replaced chaos with structure as best as I could, distraction with stillness, and pressure with presence. I unlearned the parts of me that were built for survival, essentially relearned how to actually live. And slowly the spark came back for me. I wasn't just waking up rested, I was waking up excited. I had energy again, clarity again. I really felt like myself again. That was the beginning of the life that I have now. One that's rooted in intention, not obligation. One that's built around habits that support peace, not pressure. One where I can help others without abandoning myself. And the beauty of it is I get to teach others how to do the same. Because here's the truth, that all is how I gained my life back. And the system that made it all possible, I call it the Burnout Blueprint. It's the exact 4-step framework I use to go from being completely lost to building a life I have today. In the next couple of minutes, for the first time ever, I'm going to break it all down for you. So let's get into it. Now, I want to be super clear here. This isn't some overhyped one solution to everything type of thing. This is not a magic potion or a pill, a wonder routine, or a 30-minute workout that will fix it all for you. It's a system, a real repeatable structure that works when you embrace it. And it hasn't helped just me, but dozens of people that I've now helped to go from being a burnt out and frustrated healthcare pro to being clear, calm, and consistent as your own individual. One that can wake up every day with energy and purpose to help others in your job without neglecting yourself. So the Burnout Blueprint is made up of 4 core pillars. And if you've been working in the healthcare profession for a while now, and you constantly feel this feeling inside of you that doesn't allow you to function, and for you to feel like you are losing yourself, like you've tried all the self-help books out there and they still didn't work. So if that's you, then this is going to give you a sense of clarity and a toolbox that you can use to create a life you truly want. So let's dive right in with step one. Step one is assess so you don't guess. And this will feel familiar to you as a healthcare pro. So it really is the foundation, because you can't shift something you haven't clearly seen. And most people who feel burnt out or disconnected are treating the surface, the symptoms, without understanding the system underneath. They try a new routine, add another morning habit, cut caffeine for a week, and feel frustrated when nothing truly sticks. That's because they're operating without clarity. This first step is about slowing down to actually listen, to tune into the real state of your body, to track what's happening in your nervous system, to observe the subtle patterns, physical, mental, emotional, and behavioral, that are shaping your daily life. So we'll look at everything: your hydration, your sleep quality, your movements, or lack thereof. No judgment, of course. The food you eat, your relationship to rest, the language you use about yourself, the stories you unconsciously repeat, and your work environment, your boundaries, spoken or unspoken, your energy crashes, your inner resistance. Again, nothing to judge here, nothing to label, but quite simply to map out so that we have, again, full clarity of what your situation is. When I did this work for myself, I expected to find mental blocks, but what I found was deeper. My nervous system was stuck in chronic overdrive. My breathing was shallow, my sleep was fragmented, hydration was poor, my internal self-talk was borderline abusive. And the scary part is I had normalized all of it. So this kind of self-assessment is not a personality quiz. It's not a checklist. It's a compassionate inventory, a full spectrum snapshot of how you're showing up for yourself, so you can finally understand why you feel the way that you feel. And this is what gives us leverage, essentially, because once you see the truth clearly, not just intellectually, but somatically, in your body, then you're no longer guessing. You're finally starting from reality. So this is the moment most of my clients breathe a sigh of relief for the first time in months. Not because everything is fixed, but because they finally understand what needs to change and where to start in order to get the greatest sense of momentum with the minimum effective dose, if you will. So there's power in that. And that's really the beginning of transformation. Now, step two is make change as easy as 1, 2, 3. So here's what I see all the time. People hit a breaking point, realizing that something's not working, and then try to change everything overnight. They cut out coffee, start cold showers, download 3 habit tracking apps, try to meditate for 45 minutes a day, and overhaul their entire routine all at once. And yeah, within 2 weeks, they're more burnt out than they were to start with, because now they're trying to heal from burnout using the same mindset that caused it: perfectionism, pressure, and hustle. So that's not how I do it. This step is all about rewiring how you relate to change itself. It's about making change feel safe, sustainable, compassionate, and ultimately something that you can learn to love. Because real change, the kind that sticks, isn't about doing more. It's about doing what actually matters in the right order with the right level of intention that feels clear for you. So we build a lifestyle framework that becomes your foundation, a rhythm that holds you when motivation fades, a structure that supports peace, not performance. And we do this through 10 principles, with each number representing a principle. This has been trained into me by one of the best and longest in the game, Paul Chek. He's one of the true OGs when it comes to holistic health, wellness, coaching, therapy, all the things. True healer. So we start with your one love. That's the principle of the one, and that is, what is your deeper dream? What lights your soul up when no one's watching? What's the why behind your healing? Essentially, what is your big why? This becomes your compass, the North Star we orient every decision around. Then we come to two. Two is the two forces. So we have both masculine and feminine energy within all of us. Yin and yang, right? or a positive and negative. It's all expressions of the same thing, the two forces that make up everything within the universe. Structure and flow, discipline and softness, doing and being, these are all two sides of the same coin. Most people are stuck in one extreme though. For most it's yang, just that constant doing. But our aim here is to restore the balance, to find what you can do in order to tip the scales into equilibrium. So you can take aligned action without burning out and rest without guilt. 3 is the 3 choices that we only ever have. So every day you face decisions, and every decision fits into one of 3 categories: dream affirmative, dream neutral, or dream destructive. Learning to recognize these in real time is a game changer. It helps you to stay on track without needing to be perfect, essentially. And lastly is the 4 doctors. So borrow from Paul Chek. These are the 4 areas of life we anchor everything around when it comes to health, wellness, and all the pieces of the puzzle. So 1 is Dr. Diet, and this is how you nourish yourself. Dr. Quiet is how you rest and recover. Dr. Movement is how you move your body. And Dr. Happiness is how you experience joy and purpose for yourself. So I'll stop here at number 4 for now out of the 1 through 10 principles for the sake of time. But if you'd like to dive deeper into this framework, just check out Paul Chek's work. His book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, explains all of this in greater detail. That being said, when you organize your life around these life principles, everything starts to make sense and finally flow. Suddenly, self-care isn't a to-do list. It's a way of being. This step was a massive shift for me because for the first time, I wasn't trying to escape life. I was building one that I actually wanted to live. I stopped chasing motivation and I started trusting rhythm, and that really changed everything. Step 3 is unlearn your limiting beliefs. This is where the real rewiring begins, because let's be honest, you can have all the routines and tools in the world, but if your identity hasn't changed, if the story you're telling yourself hasn't changed, then these tools won't stick. You'll keep sabotaging, falling off, and starting over. Why? Because underneath it all, you still don't believe I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve to rest, or if I slow down, everything will fall apart. And these just aren't thoughts, they're stories. And they've been reinforced for years, most likely, by culture, by systems, by family patterns, by the healthcare industry, and by your own survival instincts. This step is about breaking those stories. First, you have to become aware of them. And by doing that, you can reclaim your own narrative. This shifts your internal language so that it actually supports the life you want to live. We start by identifying those limiting beliefs that are driving your behavior, getting very intimate with your inner critic. And yeah, not just what you do, but why you do it. So the way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, that's the inner critic. The thoughts that pop up when you try to rest, the guilt you feel for putting yourself first. We make the unconscious conscious, and then we work with it through a combination of nervous system regulation, breath work, somatic practices, and story work. We start to rewrite the script that goes on within you every single day. We do this gently but powerfully. This is where the nervous system meets the narrative, because true healing isn't just physical, it's linguistic, it's emotional, it's embodied. I remember when I first started this process, I had this belief that my worth depends on how much I give. I never said it out loud, but it really was driving everything. So even when I was off work, I wasn't actually resting. Even when I took time for myself, I felt selfish. Even when I had energy, I felt like I should be giving it away. Once I started unlearning that, everything changed. Rest started to feel safe. Boundaries started to feel natural. Stillness stopped feeling like laziness. And for the first time, I started building a life that felt like mine. This step is the bridge from burnout to belief, from pressure to presence. And it's where most transformation truly begins. And lastly, step 4. So this is what I call the resilience resources. So this is where everything you've built starts to take root. Clarity without structure is fragile. Story work without support systems will eventually collapse under the pressure of life. That's why this step matters. So the resilience resources is where we bring in the practical, grounded tools that help you stay in alignment, not just touch it for a moment. These tools aren't about optimizing or hustle. They're about creating sustainable rhythms that your nervous system can actually trust, because your body doesn't respond to what you know is good for you. It responds to consistency, to safety, and to familiarity. This phase is about building a toolbox that serves you specifically, especially on those hard days, especially when motivation is gone, especially when the old patterns try to sneak back in. So here's what we focus on with it. Nervous system regulation, simple breath work, stillness, and body awareness practices that calm the sympathetic system and create a sense of grounded presence. Not the complicated stuff, just the real stuff that works in 3 minutes or less, in the car, before a shift, between calls. Hydration and nourishment protocols. You'd be amazed at how many emotional spirals are rooted in basic dehydration and blood sugar crashes. We anchor this in your daily rhythm so that you're supporting your biology without overthinking it. Next is sustainable movement. No 90-minute gym mandates. No pressure to get shredded. Just movement that feels like medicine. So walking, stretching, yoga, functional strength and breath practices, movement that tells your body, we're safe, we're here. And creative expression. Burnout doesn't come from overworking. It comes from under-expressing who you really are. So we introduce creativity not as a task, but as a release. So this can look like journaling, drawing, playing music, playing a sport, making voice notes, letting something inside of you come out. We also can do micro boundaries and rituals. So this can look like defining clear, realistic boundaries around your time, your inputs, and your energy. And we build tiny rituals to reinforce them. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You need micro choices that build macro safety. For me, this step was the anchor. It's what turned healing into a lifestyle, not a to-do list. Now I wake up and I know what supports me uniquely. I don't guess, I don't push through, I just protect the life that I've built. And that's what I want for you too. So these aren't hacks, they're reminders that your body already knows what healing looks like. We're just helping you remember how to listen. And this system not only helped me, but also helped one of my clients. Kristen came in while in nurse practitioner school. She was grinding through 12-hour shifts, overwhelmed before the day even began, and questioning if she was cut out for the career she'd worked so hard for. But through her work, she was able to slow down, to start breathing more fully, and reconnect with her sense of joy again. Not just in her career, but outside of it too, perhaps more importantly. Her morning anxiety has softened, and she's told me, I finally feel like I can handle life. Not because life got easier, but because I got stronger. And then there's Lindsay. Lindsay is a nurse who was living in Hawaii at the time, who came into coaching feeling deeply disconnected from herself. Not just from work, but from her own inner authentic being. She shared that the hospital felt out of alignment with her values, and that culturally she didn't feel at home in her environment. Her nervous system was on edge, her emotions were heavy, and her sense of purpose had faded. Through our sessions, she reconnected with her breath, her voice, and her spiritual center. She wrote a personal vision that gave her goosebumps and started creating space in her life for joy and restoration. She told me, I feel like I finally have permission to be who I am, not who I thought I had to be. That level of clarity is now guiding her toward a future that actually feels like hers. So this is it, my entire story and the Burnout Blueprint, the system that made it all possible. you now know it. And if you're a healthcare professional that feels burnt out, you feel constant stress, and you feel like you're losing yourself, you've tried the self-help books, you've tried some breath work, some meditation, some boundary setting with time blocking, and maybe even a little therapy, but you still feel off, then here's what I'll say to you. If you want to work with me personally and get my help implementing all of this to build a life that allows you to help others while feeling energetic without all this stress and a healthier body, just DM me on Instagram. Tell me where you're at and I'll tell you if I can help. Literally no pressure. It's always just a real conversation. And that's it for now. I hope this gave you some real value and I really appreciate you listening.